If there was ever an example of a car that I think you should see more of on the road, it's this, the 2024 Honda Accord. Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of Four Wheels and a Seat. I'm Alex Dalrymple and you found your way to my channel where I review new cars every week. To make sure you don't miss an episode, please hit the subscribe button down below the notification bell, and if you enjoy the video, please do give me a like. There was a time when the Honda Accord was one of the world's best-selling cars. That was before the rise of the SUV. Last month in Australia, Honda managed to move just 13 of these, and frankly, that's not enough because, for the most part, this is a really good car. And it looks really good too. It's more interesting than the aging Mazda 6 or Toyota Camry, and maybe a little safer than the Hyundai Sonata. They're this car's main competitors. And you can see its good design up here at the front as well, where it does take on a few of the design cues from the smaller Civic, like these elongated LED lights and the same shaped grille, but here it's just a little bit squared off and looking a bit more aggressive. From the side, you can see this car shares its overall shape with the previous generation's Civic Sedan, which is no longer available in Australia. So it's more of a coupe sort of form. Looks like it could be a liftback, but no, it is actually just a regular sedan. The Accord comes in one spec only, and that's RS, and that means 18-inch alloy wheels, which would be great if they were a little bit bigger, but the trade-off is a slightly smoother ride. Panoramic sunroof up on top, and that nice coupe shape here swooping down to the rear end. But it's the back of the Accord that I like the very best because I really like what they've done here. It's kind of an almost 1980s retro throwback a bit, with these LED parallel lights here that go almost the whole way across, not quite. We've got the big RS badge there, more sequential turn indicators here in the rear light clusters, little lip spoiler. But this car's best party trick is its enormous boot. 570 litres. I can't think of a sedan with a bigger boot than this one. Yesterday, I went and bought a big fire pit for my backyard to keep warm this winter, plus 2 laundry baskets, and the whole lot fit in there with plenty of room to spare. This is a very usable space. And under the bonnet is a hybrid powertrain with a 2-litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated petrol engine combined with 2 electric motors working in an Atkinson cycle. So that means that one electric motor is used purely as a generator to charge the battery in the back, and the other is used in conjunction with the petrol engine to propel the car forward through its front wheels. Together, all that combines 135 kilowatts of power and 335 Newton meters of torque, with a combined fuel economy of just 4.3 litres per 100 kilometres on a combined cycle, which is pretty much what I've been getting this week driving around town. So it's a very efficient mid-size sedan. Just like Mazda, Honda have been moving a bit more upmarket to try and distance themselves from Korean and Chinese rivals. And the Accord comes in only one spec, which is RS, which has been traditionally Honda's top spec. So the Accord feels quite premium inside, with a really nice mix of materials. The signature metal grate that we've now seen across the range of new Honda cars is here, plus the joystick controls on the vents. The materials all feel really solid and really well put together. There are also coloured LEDs throughout the cabin, which change colours according to the driving conditions and also change between blue and red as you adjust the temperature on the climate controls. The centre console screen is 12 inches and I believe the biggest you will find in any Honda. It uses the latest Honda system, but it has been tweaked here a little bit for this car, and I'm not actually sure that that's a good thing because it seems to be solving a problem that no one has an issue with the introduction of this dial down here in the middle. Now, this is not a volume control or a jog wheel to control the screen. It's actually controlling your user profiles for the climate control. So there's auto heating and auto cooling, and you can set up various aspects of control through that. It's quite a complicated system to use, and frankly, I find it a bit unnecessary. If you just want to change the temperature, you can do that with the rocker switches down here in the middle, and it's probably a little bit easier and quicker to do it that way. So that system is quite complicated. This dial, though, does have a cool clock feature in the middle of it. You can switch that between analog or digital. It's got some cool graphics. But going back to the center console screen, it's Android based and is actually really well featured. It features a Google Assistant plus news and weather apps. There's native navigation, which looks really, really good on it, and wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto as well. Although, interestingly, if you're using wireless Apple CarPlay, it does turn off the maps in the instrument cluster. You can't have both sets of maps on at the same time, I guess, unless they're worried that they're going to compete with each other or something. Anyway, it's a pretty good system. It's connected to a 12-speaker Bose sound system, which is just amazing. It sounds so good. Down the bottom here, 2 USB-C ports, wireless phone charging, good-sized cup holders, a big gear shifter here, which I like that they've included that in this car. In some overseas specs of the Accord, it's a push-button gear shifter, but here we get the proper, and it just feels good. Drive mode controls plus EV mode button here if you want to run the car just completely electrically. You can do that while charge is in the battery, and a really good sized center console bin with a 12-volt power outlet there too. The head-up display on the windshield is probably about the brightest I've ever seen and shows you navigation and your speed and that kind of thing on there as well. The digital instrument cluster, yeah, it's okay. It is a little bit more interesting than some of the ones you see in other Honda vehicles. There's a couple of different display modes to show, and I really like the full screen maps. The full screen Google Maps on here look just as good as those that you'd find in an Audi. The steering wheel, leather wrapped with red stitching, looks nice and sporty, has good feel to it. This is pretty much the same wheel across the range in all Honda cars at the moment, with a couple of small paddle shifters here on the back, although this car is a CVT, so there aren't any gears, but you can sort of, pretend to change gears if you like. And the seats are leather, again, that nice red stitching. The seating position, like all Hondas, is nice and low in the cabin and feels really sporty. These seats are incredibly comfortable with electric adjustment and lumbar support for the driver. And the seating position is really fantastic too. Great visibility right to the front corners of the bonnet and all around the car actually. Now there is one big thing that I have not mentioned, and it is a potential deal breaker for me in the current cold weather we have at the moment, and that is for reasons known only to Mr. and Mrs. Honda. Australian spec Accords do not come with heated or ventilated seats, which seems like a massive oversight in a car at this price point. The seats are perforated, they're ready, they look ready to be heated and ventilated. In overseas markets they're heated and ventilated, but not in Australia. What is going on, Honda? All right, my first time sitting in the back seat of the Honda Accord, and initial impressions are, wow, there is a lot of room. I'm 190 centimeters tall behind my own seating position, and not only does this car have stacks of room for front passengers and an enormous boot, but rear seat passengers have a lot of room too. How do Honda pull off this magic act of such a roomy mid-sized car? I am amazed. Now the one downside of having all that room and the cool looking sloping roof means not a lot of headroom. So for me, yeah, head not quite firmly up against the ceiling, but my hair is getting a good workout there. But on a short trip that wouldn't really be too much of an issue. We've got the armrest here with a couple of cup holders, 2 USB-C charging ports down there. There's no rear zone of climate control, but we can give that a miss. Panoramic sunroof looks really good, and rear seat passengers also get window shades. So all up, I'm pretty impressed with the back seat of the Honda Accord. The first impression I had of this car when I got in it was that it had a very sort of limousine-like ride. It's quite large, obviously, at nearly 5 meters, and it's softly sprung and it's quiet and refined. So, if you're a rideshare driver and you had to spend several hours a day behind the wheel, you'd be very happy in an Accord. It is extremely comfortable and easy to drive. And it just sort of takes off sort of gingerly, not really aggressively in any way, but if you put your foot down a little more firmly, the power is there, it's ready to go, it's on tap. So in that sense, it doesn't quite live up to the RS badge. RS for Honda is normally meant a bit of extra performance. I've got an RS Civic, for example, and that came with a more powerful 1.5 litre turbo engine as opposed to the naturally aspirated 2 litre that came in the lower spec models. But in this car, RS just seems to be more of a trim line. It's more about luxury rather than sport. There are a few drive modes: normal, eco, sport, and individual. I actually really like the individual mode myself because you can design your own drive mode and adjust things like the powertrain. Do you want that in normal or sport? The steering, which I like in sport for a bit more feel. But Hondas, of course, have always been known for their dynamic performance, and this car lives up to that. It feels really good and flat going around corners. You can take them at speed without any worry about losing grip or control. Even though it's front-wheel drive and the weather today is a little bit wet, I still feel like I've got plenty of grip on the road. Is the Accord a turn-back car, a car so good looking that you have to turn back and look at it when you park it? I think arguably yes. I think it's actually a really good looking sedan and one of the best looking on the road. As I said before, it's newer and fresher than the Mazda and Toyota, and it's not quite as intense to look at as the Hyundai Sonata, although that is a seriously good looking car. But I think this is a really good looking car too, but just in a slightly more refined and elegant kind of way. The hybrid powertrain in this car is absolutely faultless. I mean, you cannot tell virtually when it's switching between electric and petrol modes. It just works so well. Occasionally you'll hear the generator firing up to charge the battery so the car can run in electric mode as much of the time as possible. And if you want a preference EV mode, of course, you've got the E button down here in the lower console, and the car will run electrically until it runs out of battery, and then it will charge it again. Safety gear, well, this car comes with the full complement of Honda Sense safety equipment, which includes things like blind spot monitors in the rear vision mirrors, adaptive cruise control with braking, forward collision alert, and top-down 360 parking view camera. I forgot to mention also this car has its own wireless internet connection, which allows for over-the-air updates. So, you know, the way that this center knob works, in theory, could change altogether with an update from Honda. Another thing I really like about this cabin, as opposed to some of the Hyundais I've driven lately, is that when this car beeps, and it doesn't do it often, it's just nice and quiet. It's sort of politely saying, oh, be careful of that. Not, watch out, you're gonna crash, which is seemingly what most Hyundais do these days. So in summary, I think the Honda Accord is a great mid-size sedan that unfortunately gets overlooked, and you can say the same of pretty much every other car in this class. SUVs rule the roost these days. But at $65,000, this car is not exactly cheap, but I think it is perhaps the best package of refinement, comfort, borderline luxury, and fantastic fuel economy you're going to find. So if all of those sound appealing to you, I think it's definitely worth taking one of these for a test drive.